everyone, all of our guests, to watch another iconic podcast from Gridiron Icon Podcast. We got a special guest this evening, and as we huddle each and every week, we join ourselves with iconic people to bring wonderful flavor about who they are and where they come from. And it's spurred on by what introduced us to them in the first place, that professional sport, whatever that genre might have been. That's what we're doing today. And tonight's iconic guest is just a wonderful guy. My co-host, Stacy Bauman, and I just go back and forth about how excited we are to have this one. But Stacy, welcome, my friend. I'm looking forward to this. How about you?
Oh, I'm very excited to talk to this guy. Another Texan. We got a lot of Texas guys that roll through here.
Yeah, they do seem like they originate from there. You know, Texas is big enough to hold all these horses, you know. All right, we're going to kick this thing off. This is going to be great. This week's iconic guest comes from Laredo, Texas. He's going to tell us a little bit about that, where he earned letters in golf, football, basketball, baseball, and track. We want to know a little bit more about that. As a senior, won All-American honors in football, including Texas Player of the Year. Now, you got to realize how big that place is, Stacy, to be a Player of the Year. There's one guy or one person that gets that, and I guess maybe they've shared it before, but our guest won that. He also won All-State honors in baseball, All-District accolades in basketball, and from there on to Brigham Young University, one of my favorite schools, which I don't know if you knew that, but I'll have to tell you that story about Lavelle, where he was a two-time All-American, and I watched almost all his games, where he amassed for over 16,000 yards passing and 127 touchdown passes. Might I say, he also captured a little award called the Heisman Trophy along the way, which is highly recognizable and known by one of the top players in the country. Also a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. From there, went on to an NFL career where he starred and shared the quarterback room with guys like Brett Favre. Want to know about that? Steve Young, Rodney Peete, Michael Vick, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening, our iconic guest and the one and only Mr. Ty Detmer.
Number 14. Number 14 is in the house.
Yes, right. In the house. Oh, so glad to have you, my friend. You know what? I was telling Stacy as we got this show going, and we're trying to think about our guests and who we'd like to have. And I said, you know, it's time to just take this thing wherever it wants to go. And the first person I thought about was you, because, you know, he has a wonderful golf tournament that he comes out with, a dear friend of ours. Stacy Corley out here, the Corley family, wonderful tennis players. Stacy went to BYU as well, so there's a relationship there, and I always like to join these guys for the golf tournament. How are you, my friend? Tell us how things going these days.
Oh, it's going good out here in Queen Creek, Arizona, coaching high school football at American Leadership Academy here in Queen Creek, and just enjoying the springtime weather out here. It's been good.
Oh, and you know what? You guys go through actual official spring ball, don't you? Don't you have days dedicated to that?
We do. We have 16 practices. We'll start April 24th and go for about a month till about middle of May, and kind of get the boys back into football mode again. So.
That can't be too hard to do. Man, there's so many questions, so many things we want to ask you, but we're going to kick this off, and my partner is going to jump in here when he feels like it, because he's got a ton of questions. But Ty, let's start this thing out from the beginning. Tell us how. Well, of course, growing up in Texas, you can't do anything else but love football, and I imagine football was the first sport that you tried to tackle.
It was. I played everything growing up. My dad was a high school coach. Early on in his career, he coached baseball and basketball as well as like lower level football, and then he became a head football coach, and I just got to be the ball boy and the guy hanging around the sideline in the coaches' meetings, listening to the coaches talk and watching the film. Back then it was film, run forward and backward, and just, picked up a lot along the way, I think, without really even being talked to, just hearing coaches talk and being around it. And so and growing up in Texas, that's kind of was the main sport and probably the most exciting for people to watch. So I just kind of gravitated towards that.
Boy, I tell you, you just fly over the state of Texas in an airplane, and you look down at those high school stadiums, and you're like, what? This is a whole different gig in Texas, and you're bringing that to Arizona, I'm assuming, with your crew.
Well, we're trying. We're having a good time down here. I coach with Max Hall, who also, um, played for the Cardinals for a year, and
Yeah.
so we have a good time, and we're building a program. We're moved up to 6A this year, so we've moved up
Oh,
3
did you?
levels in the last 4 years,
Wow.
and the school's really been growing, and the program's been growing.
I remember when 3A was the top class out there when I was in school. Boy, I'm old.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit since then. So it's good though. We're enjoying it.
Wow.
Phenomenal. So, hey, do you mind going back a little bit for those of us who don't get to golf with you, like my big shot co-host over there, and the fans who are really interested in catching up with you? How did you get started? I mean, I got to tell you, I was totally taken back to learn that you were a track guy too. And I mean that with utmost respect, but I remember the prolific passing yards
Right.
from Brigham Young. I was trying to remember you running around like crazy and with speed kills on your back. I don't remember that. How did you take us back to when you were a kid there?
Yeah. So my dad, he talked me into running track. He said, "Hey,
Good.
it'll help you get faster." I wasn't the fastest kid. I wasn't very big. Wasn't very fast. I could throw it, and so I said, "All right, and I guess I better do the hurdles because I can't just run straight ahead with distraction or something." So I did the hurdles, the 300 and the 110, just to try to gain speed more than anything for football. So that wasn't my first love for sure, and baseball season was at the same time, so I'd go from track practice, catch the second half of baseball. Get my swings in, field, and then get to run the bases with those guys. So, I was pretty active, pretty busy in high school, which was fun.
Love it. Your parents had a big impact on that.
They did.
They encouraged it.
Again, my dad suggested it. He didn't force it on me, but I figured, well, if he's telling me I need to get faster, I probably ought to do it. So, and it was fun. We had a good group of friends that we all ran together and did everything together. And so, it made it easy to jump right in there.
God, the life of a coach's son is so underrated. So underrated.
I can't complain. I had a great childhood. My dad was one of those guys that he didn't just, he wasn't a drill sergeant. He wasn't your typical, stereotypical, high school football coach. He allowed us to have fun. We played loose. We threw the ball around at a time when most teams weren't. And, we had some characters on that team that just, you couldn't tighten them up. If you made them tight and you made them just do it this way, it wasn't going to work for them. And he recognized that and allowed us just to have a lot of fun playing and be wide open and learn the game.
Wow. And throwing that ball around with the family and siblings, and all of a sudden, one day, that ball had to travel a little bit different. When did that trigger really come into play when you realized, hey, I kind of can throw this thing? When did that happen for you?
Started as a sophomore, and I think threw for about 1,100 yards. Did okay. I was still kind of scrawny, 145 pound, back there trying to figure it out. And my junior year, we came out, and the first game of the season, my dad kind of jokingly, "Hey, let's throw for 250."
I love it.
We ended up throwing for 350, and it was like, whoa, we got something special going. Our tight end was 5'7", 150 pounds, but could fly. Dennis Ray, our receivers, everything kind of fell into place. We released both backs, and those guys could catch it out of the backfield, which nobody was doing then. Your linebackers were big, thick guys with a neck roll, and so it just everything lined up. And that year, we went, and that was the year. We went 12-0 and 12-1, lost. In the going into the quarterfinals, and first time our school had ever been in the playoffs, and so.
Wow.
That's when things kind of clicked and started getting some recognition from colleges, and everything just kind of realized, hey, I've got a chance to play in college. Who knows what happens after that? So.
Wow, that college thing. I mean, so I'm fascinated by that piece of your journey. Multi-sport athlete, coach's son. Could probably talk for another hour on that. But as you progressed in, especially based on your size and your multifaceted talents, you're in Texas. Did Texas try to recruit you? How did you end up at BYU? This has got to be a story, I'm assuming.
I mean, I got letters from some of the schools in Texas, and Baylor was probably throwing it more than anybody at that time with staff. And but I kind of started. I saw BYU win the national championship in 1984. Didn't know where BYU was or what Provo, Utah was, but having seen them play and a real similar style of offense where the backs were involved, tight end was involved. It kind of piqued my interest and took a trip up there that summer before my senior year. They'd sent a recruiter down that spring and watched practice and got to take a trip. And, Lavelle tells a story, this hot shot, big quarterback from Texas is in town and, is going to be 6'4", 230 pounds and in walk Pee Wee Herman, and so probably if he'd have seen me before the trip, he probably wouldn't have offered me. But
Right.
he pulled the trigger while we were up there and offered me, and I verbally committed at that time, and just felt like, man, this is a perfect setup. But, they're doing it like nobody else, and real similar to what we were doing. So I was really familiar with the style of offense going in there after my senior year, and it was, sometimes you just fall into the right spot at the right time and it's the perfect fit for you. And that's really what BYU was for me, football wise, just everything involved with it. It was really the perfect fit.
Ty, tell us about the relationship. I tell everybody, Lavelle Edwards is a totally different person than you could ever imagine. Because he was special to each individual he met. There was something about him that he had to offer to each person he met. Tell us your journey with Lavelle and that relationship. Obviously, he had to be a huge impression when you first decided to go to school there.
Yeah, I think, the program that he had built kind of spoke for itself, especially at the quarterback position at that time where you had Gifford Nielsen, Mark Wilson, Jim McMahon, Steve Young, Robbie Bosco. I mean, just lined up in order. And so that was first and foremost. And then as you meet him, like you said, he's kind of, it's not the old school where you coach everybody the same. I mean, he treats everybody differently because we're all different people, right? And different interests. And he was one of those guys that could just talk to you as a man and as a father figure, and not the drill sergeant type of coach. So he really reminded me a lot of my dad and the style he coached. And it was, a very kind of calming effect that he had over the team where there were no highs and lows. He kind of had that grumpy look on his face all the time, but wasn't a grumpy type of guy, it's just the way his face was built, I guess. But he was just, one of those guys that kept everything calm, everything under control. And as a player, you could go play without fear of just being jumped on and benched right away. Everything was thought out and just a great relationship with him. And then when I got done playing, I really got to know him more on a personal level. And that friendship grew at that time, and spent with time with him and his wife, Patty, and just, really, really grew to love the man because of what he brought to the table and how he did things, how he treated you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Lavelle Edwards, I mean, he's an icon. He's an icon in football history. I gotta ask you, Ty, I mean, just from a very human standpoint, for those of us that never quite got to where you guys got, do you ever just sit back and pinch yourself? I mean, the 1990 season that you had is still one of the best seasons by a quarterback in college football history. Over 5,000 yards in 12 games. You finished the year with 42 NCAA records. Ty, that doesn't happen to everybody. Do you ever just pinch yourself? And do you get the kids asking you now as a coach, how do you do when you reflect on that?
Yeah, I think, it's always a little bit surreal, and you probably have to pinch yourself every time I go to New York for the Heisman announcement.
Oh yeah.
And I'm standing there next to the guys I grew up, were my heroes, Tony Dorsett. In Texas, huge Cowboy fan.
Right.
First time I met Roger Staubach, I'm just in awe. It's like, Roger, that was the guy. That was my hero growing up. So every time you get to New York, it's kind of like, man, I'm very blessed to have been able to be in this situation, to be able to be a part of that group, and so yeah, I mean, there's times where it's just like, just so fortunate that it happened to me. I mean, it could happen to anybody. If it happened to me, it can happen to anybody, and I just feel like, again, BYU is the right place, the right time, the right people around you. It takes everybody. It's a team, especially for a quarterback. You got to have guys like Preston Denard throw them a 5-yard slant and they go for 80. So
No, mine's more like throw it for 60 and I'll run the other 20. Just hope you throw it in the end zone, Ty.
too. So yeah, you sit there and you kind of gotta take a step back and just appreciate it and enjoy it, because it's something as a kid you dream of growing up as a high school football player in Texas. I remember watching Earl Campbell win the Heisman and thought, man, that's the guy right there. That's the pinnacle of it. And then now I'm sitting there next to him, and he's telling me, giving me advice about it. And I'm like, wow, this is not supposed to happen. So,
what's the tell us one thing that the common fan and us guys who haven't had that one experience being a Hall of Famer, tell us one thing that we wouldn't know today that you've experienced once you become a Hall of Famer.
Well,
a little insight.
Yeah. So the thing Earl Campbell told me when they presented the trophy that night at the dinner was the Heisman Trophy will do more for you than you can ever do for it. And
Wow.
that's been the case. I mean, you get announced as a Heisman Trophy winner. You can play 14 years in the NFL. You can do all of those things, but you're always going to be a Heisman winner. And that's been a treat for me, and it was special for my family, especially my dad.
Bet. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, buddy.
Yeah. There's the love, baby. There's the love.
Give me the feels.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's how this game started.
Family and always has been. So.
Oh, Ty, that's special, man. That's special. Yeah. Without Dad, there's no Ty, right? And there's none of those accomplishments. Amazing. You got to tell us, where's the Heisman today? Does Dad have the Heisman, or
No.
do the kids have it and the girl, they're throwing?
So they had it for a few years when we were bouncing around from team to team.
Oh yeah.
They took it home with them on the plane. Probably wouldn't have gone over real well in a college apartment. Who knows what would. So my parents took it, had it for a long time. Now it's in the office here at our house, and kind of
Nice.
Wonderful.
I tuck it behind the closed doors and pull it out as needed. But yeah, they enjoyed it for a long time, and now it's here at the house. So
Well, I can tell you, as you
Special.
get older, that need grows quite a bit.
yeah, especially around high school kids where you're like, hey, you remember this? Now just listen to me, trust me.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of credibility here every now and then. So
Outstanding.
What a special moment for you and your family, man. Thank you. That
Yep.
it's such a massive accomplishment, and you can always probably look over at that thing and you've got that bond with your dad to relive that thing. That's amazing.
yeah, and my mom, she doesn't get enough credit. She was the one getting me to and from practices, and kind of keeping it all under control at home. And my dad passed away a couple years ago, so my mom gets to be in the spotlight a little bit now. But she was a big part of it, just helping control my attitude and all those things. Dad was away coaching, so like I said, I've got nothing to complain about in my childhood growing up, and couldn't ask for a better childhood.
Oh, bless you.
That's so cool. So special,
That is.
man.
Really is.
Special. Well, as always, your college career was seriously, without pouring it on here, was one of the most prolific in passing history. I mean, it's incredible. That's why you won that award. But we got to bring it up to the pros and getting into the NFL. What was that like? That initial experience getting drafted back then, for those of us that had loved this game for that long, the 9th round, you get picked up by this little franchise known as the Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
I'm sure your dad was over the moon about that. What was that experience like for a young guy in his early 20s coming out of Texas, then BYU, now Green Bay?
Yeah, it was, at that time, you're just hoping to get a chance somewhere, by the time the 9th round comes around, you're like, just give me a shot and see, you know. And honestly, that first year was really the perfect time to come in there. Again, down the right place, the right time. Mike Holmgren's first year, they just traded for Brett Favre. Don Mikowski was there. Steve Mariucci was our quarterback coach. John Gruden was the offensive quality control. Andy Reid was the tight end coach. Ray Rhodes was the D coordinator. Dick Geronimo.
Good grief.
All those guys became head coaches from that staff. So I got to know all of them on a personal level for 4 years. And even though I didn't get to play much, they saw me in practice, saw how I ticked, knew I knew the offense. So I always had a place to go after Green Bay because I knew so many of the coaches and they knew me, even though there wasn't a lot of film on me. So it was a great spot to be drafted. I was just happy to make the team the first 2 years. Mike Thomas signed right at the end of camp. He'd been holding out, and I thought, all right, well, that just sealed my fate. And Monday morning, back then we didn't have cell phones, so they were like, hey, stay at home. Wow. Hang around in case we need to call you. And Monday morning, I come peeking in the locker room like maybe they didn't have my number and my stuff was still hanging in the locker. And like, wow, I made the team. All right. The next year they draft Mark Brunell, and it's me and Brett and Mark and signed Ken O'Brien as a veteran guy. And again, I'm kind of like Monday morning peeking around, and they had decided to let Ken O'Brien go and keep Brett as a third-year player, me as a second-year player, and Mark as a first-year player. And so they had a kind of a leap of faith with Brett and all of us together. And after that, kind of settled in and kind of, made my way and kind of knew where I fit and felt pretty secure different places I went. So, but those first 2 years were just hoping to make the team.
That's one of those things, Stacy, that probably, I don't know, Ty, maybe you'd agree with this. One of the most frustrating moments in an athlete's life. It's either there in training camp as training camp numbers are going down, you're hoping to be there on that next cut all the way through the last one. But going through something like that, the average fan doesn't have any idea of going through a scenario like that. Touch a little bit more on that, as you had mentioned. The anticipation, your brain's going against you. It's telling you one thing, and you're fighting with yourself.
That first year, like, I didn't know anything. I just, kind of just going with the flow, and whatever happened. The next year, I kind of knew, all right, it's a pretty important deal, and you see guys getting cut. And then, like I said, they signed Ken O'Brien as a veteran backup to Brett. They told me they weren't going to draft anybody, and then they draft Mark in the 5th round and touting him the steal of the draft, and another Steve Young, lefty, mobile quarterback. And I'm thinking, man, there's no chance. They're never going to keep 3 young guys, and they like to keep their draft picks. And Mark's a good player out of Washington. And so I struggled in practice, not going to lie. I did not practice well, but when the games came around, I played pretty good in the games. And I'm just sitting there, like you said, your mind's fighting against your body because in your back of your mind, you're like, I'm not going to be here. What the heck, but at the same time, hey, I can't go down like this either, and Ken kind of struggled picking up the offense, didn't play great in the preseason games. And so he bought a house there. So I'm like, he's secure. And I just, again, just hoping to squeak in there somehow, and I did, and lasted 12 more years, bouncing around in 5 other teams, you know.
It's
So
incredible.
it worked out, but again, you know, felt like the right place, the right time with that coaching staff and everybody that was there.
And you're tailor made for the Mike Holmgren offense at the time, weren't you? That West Coast, getting the backs involved, the tight end. I mean, that was your world. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
No, I felt real comfortable in it. A lot of BYU type of concepts. I mean, you know, Norm Chow was our OC, and he picked up a lot, you know, through going to camps, and I think Mike picked up a little bit of the Ted Tollner, you know, Doug Scoville offense there at BYU, and so that whole West Coast was real similar to what BYU did, and so I was naturally comfortable in it.
And of course, I mean, I got to bring this up, Ty. There's the famous clip by Brett Favre where he doesn't know what a nickel defense is, and he's like, I learned from Ty Detmer over there. Ty Detmer taught me how to read a defense. I think you were around for a reason, my friend.
Yeah, Brett was awesome. I love Brett. We had a great relationship. You know, you're happy to help. We're all in it together, and Brett had a lot to learn those early years. I mean, he'd spend and you wouldn't have known it, you know. And he'll tell you, like, I don't remember anything that went on down there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we were all learning together. Steve Mariucci first year in the NFL as well, and so, you know, we all went through Brett's growing pains with the interceptions and things like that the first couple years, and it was great to kind of sit back and learn from and to see how to prepare and maybe what not to do and what to do. So, you know, we all had a great relationship and really enjoyed being around each other and learning and growing.
It's incredible. Incredible. And listen, it didn't stop there. You moved on to other teams. You had some really, really big games as a Philadelphia Eagle. You've played with guys like Steve Young and Michael Vick. How were you in your role if you weren't the starter? How were you able to support those guys? Brett is constantly calling you out. Like, I've seen multiple interviews. Ty Detmer kept me alive. I mean, he's constantly talking about it. But like these other guys, Steve Young, Michael Vick, and then you were kind of a mentor to Tim Couch there in Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
At least
Joey
that was the idea.
Roy,
Oh, and Joey, yeah.
some of those guys. So it kind of, after I left Philly, I went to San Francisco knowing Steve was, you know, kind of winding down his career. They had Jim Druckenmiller, and so I was there kind of to help Jim try to learn how to be a pro, because Steve was Steve. You know, he's tunnel vision in his own world doing his thing, and so I kind of came in, helped Jim, you know, try to figure it out, and they ended up making me the backup, and he was the third quarterback, and supported Steve, and I think I was a calming influence for Steve. You know, that guy's kind of worked up and but that's what made him great. He just felt like he had to know everything about what was going on around him, and I could kind of come in and like, hey, just do what you do. I mean, what the heck? You're NFL MVP. You've been doing this forever, you know? Yeah, you're right. You know, I shouldn't worry so much. And so I think I had a good calming effect on Steve. And then, you know, I go to Cleveland, and they tell me that we're going to draft a quarterback. And so knew I was just a placeholder for Tim at that time. And you know, try to help him learn how to be a pro, how to prepare, how to do all those things, and keep it lighthearted as well. And then go to Detroit, and Charlie Batch was the starter. They kind of, I felt like they replaced Charlie too quick with me, and kind of went back and forth. And then they drafted Joey Harrington and helped, you know, kind of him. And then I go to Atlanta with Mike Vick, and the West Coast offense was coming in there with Greg Knapp and Jim Mora Jr. and kind of help support Mike and draft Matt Shaw and try to talk to Matt behind the scenes while Mike's playing, you know. And so that kind of became the role, a little bit of a young guy mentor and support to the starter.
Wow. That's an incredible. At what point in that journey did you start to think, I might have something in this coaching thing that works for me? I mean, a coach's son, a Heisman winner.
Yeah.
Did you start to somewhere in that traveling journey there figure it out? That
was always the fallback plan. If I didn't make it at Green Bay, I figured, well, I can coach. I know, I grew up around it. I feel like I've learned football at BYU, and I can always probably go coach high school ball and do that. And so then, obviously after Philly and having a chance to play, and then knowing, okay, I'm going to San Francisco and back up Steve, and maybe I get a chance after he, retires, and then it worked out where Dwight Clark and Carmen Policy went to Cleveland. I kind of made a business decision because I got to rework my contract and get another bonus. So that was kind of the retirement plan, right? So at that point, it was like, okay, this is going to be my role as a player coach type of guy. But I saw how hard the NFL coaches work and the hours they put in. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I want life when I'm done playing.
That's a tough one right there. That's always been tough, even at the college level, but still pros. So I don't think they have a home.
For 2 years of recruiting, the time commitment to that too is like, I'm perfectly content coaching high school football and having a life outside of it.
Yeah, have dinner with the family. Yep. So I have to ask something that's always intrigued me about you, because not everybody has that journey. You go from the Green Bays and the Phillies and the 49ers to the Detroits and the Clevelands. And respect to those fan bases, as a Rams fan who's been through some lean years after Mr. Denard left us. How do you navigate going from franchises that are just all about the championship to those that are really struggling? What did you learn on that journey, Ty?
Yeah, you learn a lot about organizations, and the ones that are successful are that way for a reason. You look at Green Bay and the consistency they've had. I really feel like it's because they don't have one owner that can make a knee-jerk reaction. They've got a board, and they can sit there and they don't go through coaches every 2 years. They don't go through quarterbacks every 2 years. They've been pretty fortunate with the guys they've had, but part of that's because the coaches are there for so long, and the system, and know what's expected out of them. So, and then you go to, a Detroit where we were 1-15 and 2-14, and the owner was not really around. The organization had some control issues. Who was really running it? Who wasn't? And it trickles down. And so, you learn a lot about why things are successful, and part of it's just having a little bit of patience, having your head about you, and making sure that things trickle down from the top, and players feel it. So that was fun. At the time when you come out of college, you want to be in one place the whole time. But now looking back, it's like, man, what a great opportunity to learn a lot about football and organizations and businesses, and why some are successful and why some aren't.
Incredible.
Yeah,
And your family, I mean, there's never enough time to ask how your wife navigated supporting you and kids and moving schools and cities and all of that stuff. I mean, that's a hero's journey. That's tough.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part of it. As your kids start getting older. I think when I got done in 2005, my youngest daughter was 12, going into 7th grade, and that's kind of a time where it was really the perfect time to end, because now they're going to start doing their thing. She wanted to be a cheerleader, and they got to kind of get in with the group and do that. And so we bought a house in Texas in 1999, and then would spend half a year in Texas, half a year wherever I was playing. So the kids had to go back and forth to schools and learn how to adjust, and part of it's good for them, part of it's hard on them, trying to make friends every 6 months. And so, that's what a lot of people probably don't see, or the behind the story, behind the Sundays part of life for players, as you have a family. For a young guy right out of college and he's single, not that big a deal, right?
Right.
Yeah, just roll.
In Green Bay in 92, and she made it through the whole journey with us, and had others along the way. Had 4 daughters ultimately, and all while we were playing and moving, and a lot of it fell on my wife to get them there. And in July, after, sometimes it was after camp to make sure you were on the teams. Most of the time you kind of knew going in, but I got traded in Cleveland right at the end of training camp to Detroit, and she had to pack up and get up there in a U-Haul, and then we lived in a hotel for a couple of weeks, and 9/11 hit, and then it really got crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Wow.
It was an interesting year that year for us, for sure.
Boy, that's right. It just rings a bell. All the different things that have happened, one after another, one after another. And then to have it in that year, that put everything at a standstill for sure.
It did, yeah. We weren't sure where we were going to live or what we were doing, if they were even going to have football at that
Yeah.
time.
It's tough enough as it is.
Unbelievable.
Well, you know what? I have to ask you, you've seen so many different athletes, you've seen so many different style quarterbacks. And when people ask you to mentor, you kind of oversee someone's development. You've had a front row seat, so you probably have an opinion about some of these guys, and maybe there's a sleeper that we don't realize was a sleeper, and maybe it was that one guy everybody else said he was going to be that guy, and you knew he wasn't.
Yeah. I think a guy like Matt Schaub, who came in to Atlanta, and you could tell he took it serious. We had, who was the quarterback out of Alabama? Jay Barker.
Yeah.
He got drafted in Green Bay, just got married. Every lunch break, he was going home between practices during two-a-days and not hanging around the facility or not studying. He couldn't tell you a formation with a play by the end of training camp. And it was like, man, Jay, if you just learn it, they want to keep their draft picks. And he was like, man, I make more speaking in Alabama than I do as my NFL player. And he just didn't put the time in, and ultimately got cut. And they kept T.J. Rubley. And then I think he got home and figured out, oh, man, I screwed up, and ended up playing with the New England Patriots for a couple years, I think.
Right.
But that was a guy the most, I don't know if he hardly lost a college football game at Alabama. And then he comes in there and just kind of shut it down mentally and never made it, And, there's guys that just kind of work their way up and become that guy where Matt Schaub came in, he studied. I mean, he put time in, he was there all the time, and ended up going and being a starter for the Texans and had a long career in the NFL. And so you just never know. Part of it's just that mental attitude that guys have, and you think Jay Barker playing at Alabama is going to be the guy and never lost a game, and came in with the wrong attitude, and a great kid, but just his heart wasn't in it at the time. And
is there a difference between college and high school coaching that different mindset?
Coaching is for sure. You
Okay.
get kids coming in, and they're young, they're still impressionable. Some of them think they've got it figured out, and you got to kind of break through that barrier at times. But most of them are real receptive. College, I don't know how coaches do it now with the transfer portal and everything else.
That's horrible.
Develop a kid now, where high school you can kind of bring them in as freshmen, see the growth, see the development in the weight room, see them on the field just grow and learn from experiences. And college, it's so different now with the transfer portal that kids are just jumping ship, and they never really settle in and develop in a system. They just go from one thing to another, and it makes it hard as a coach to develop a kid and to groom them, because, like I said, that BYU tradition with 6 or 7 guys in a row play till their junior year. So they sat for 2 or 3 learning behind the next guy, and then they got their shot. Now, if the kid doesn't play as a sophomore, he's gone, And sometimes as a freshman, they're just like, I'm out.
Yep.
So it's tough in college nowadays.
Yeah, that's the wildest thing, development, to watch these kids, 18, 19 years old. I'm going to make a lifetime decision. I'm not getting the time I want. Amazing. So obligatory fan questions, Ty, just a couple of them. Toughest player you ever faced in the NFL? Was there a guy that just drove you nuts or kept you awake at night looking at your playbook the night before?
Yeah, I think when I was with the Eagles, we played the Cowboys. Deion Sanders was over there.
Yeah.
The right corner for them, our left side, and it was like I remember one time I checked because they had a blitz look. I checked to a fade route, and I look over, and Freddie Solomon's on Deion Sanders, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking that back. So
That ain't happening.
well, there were certain things like you could throw on Deion a slant because he didn't want to get hit by the linebacker all the time, but that guy, you had to know where he was, and you couldn't throw an out route on him. You couldn't throw a stop route. You had to pick your spots, and most of the time you're working the other side of the field. So that guy, I mean, as a cover guy, you had to know where he was, and then pretty much every team's got a defensive end you're worried about all game long, so at that level, everybody's got a guy, and you got to kind of game plan around them a little bit.
Coach Sanders, look at you two. You're both coaching now. Coach Sanders, Coach Detmer.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. I got to ask the one question too about high school, if Preston will allow. You play quarterback long enough, you're going to have one of those days that you'd like to forget. 2, 3, 4 picks. I'm sure you had them. I know you had them. I watched you. Every quarterback has them. Brett Favre had them. Steve Young. Everybody has them. What do you tell a kid today? You've got a quarter now. You're the guy, and you see a young man, and it seems like 2 minutes ago you were that young man. What do you tell a kid that has a day like that? A quarterback.
I to your point, it's like, hey, shake it off. You got to learn from it. I threw 7 picks in a game. It's hard to walk back in that locker room, on Monday, but
I got a Heisman Trophy in my closet.
You keep pulling it out. Hey, remember this?
What you did is what you're doing,
What you doing?
Yeah, we got to be smarter. We got to be careful, but I think coaching the quarterback position, you got to be careful. There's times to jump on a kid, and it's as a quarterback, you got to kind of talk them through things and down on you. And at high school, you're not just blessed with 3 or 4 guys waiting to be the next guy. So, you work with them, and I can share those experiences I've had. We've all had them, like you said, but I think one of mine was worse than most. So I story for people.
I've never known a quarterback that didn't have 1 or 2 of those days. Yeah. It's part of the spot you're in, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the competitive spirit, is just keep throwing it, man. One of them.
Keep throwing it. Keep shooting it.
It's like a 3-point shooter.
You're so hot, right?
I love it. I love it. So just before we get into the 2-minute drill, which is where we have a little fun, get to know Ty Detmer behind the scenes. Do you find it different to coach today's athlete as opposed to when you were a kid? Like what your dad faced with you or your teammates? Is it just a little, I mean, I'm probably leading you into that one, but
there's a little difference. I think with social media now, and a lot of the kids want offers. They want to promote that they got an offer, things like that. You try to be realistic with them. Hey, you're 5'8", you run a 4.7 40. Let's be realistic here. Have a good time playing high school ball, and we'll see what happens. And so most of the kids are still pretty good, pretty respectful. We've got a good group, and fortunately, we've got enough players that if the kid's stepping out of line, you can kind of like, hey, you got to discipline them, and we don't have much of that. We're got a pretty good group, but ultimately, yeah, it's probably different than when we were there. At that time, I mean, you practiced. You didn't have anything else to do. Kids have a lot more options, a lot more things going on, and a lot more things they can be doing. So you still have to make it fun for them. They have to enjoy it. They got to work hard. You got to push them, but they have to have a good time playing. And so I've always believed in that, though. I don't want things to be miserable for people. I want them to have fun, and they'll work hard if they're having fun and want to be there. And so today's kid, they've got so many options with technology and video games and just everything going on. It's easy for them to drop out or to quit if you're not just treating them all differently. And like Lavelle, find that tick for each kid that gets them going and keep them involved. So that's the challenge, I think, for a lot of high school coaches now is keeping the numbers up. Our enrollment hasn't changed, but our numbers go up by 20 every year because I think they're enjoying being a part of the team, and so I feel like we're doing it the right way, or we'd be losing a lot more kids than we gain. So that's the challenge.
Fascinates me to no end. My local high school where my girls go, the head coach is Sean Mannion's father.
Oh yeah.
So we had the Mannion boys was our quarterback Friday Night Lights for us, and I had so many questions for him. It's just to see players and coaches and that interaction is fascinating. Thanks a lot, Ty.
Wow.
Well,
Ty,
give those values, but
Yeah.
they got to know you appreciate them and you love them and that you're there for them too. So
Absolutely.
outstanding. Hey, does the name Dan Minucci ring a bell for you?
oh yeah, he's out here quarterbacks all the time in the lab. He's always in the lab with them.
He's in the lab. Well,
Wow.
he, Ron Washington, I, myself, my brothers and all that, we all kind of grew up in the Tempe area. I graduated from Marcos Deniza in their first graduating class.
Yep.
And just knew all those guys back then. And,
Yep.
he kind of carved out a little bit of a Brock Purdy, Stacy. So, Dan,
Really?
he works with a lot of young kids and
Does a
got
great-
quite a few of them out there.
yeah, he
And
does.
then,
I know a few of our quarterbacks have gone to him from time to time. And he's
Wow.
a few games on one of the local high school network type of deal.
Right.
He's been out to a couple games, and he's a good guy. So we always enjoy interacting with him.
yeah, we're trying to get him on. Got to get him a date. All right, before we move on, close this thing out, you got to share about the golf tournament and partnering with Stacy and in Grants, New Mexico. Tell us a little bit about that. Share with
So
everybody.
Stacy and I played together at BYU. He was a running back for me, and 20 years ago, it's 20 years this year, he came to me and said, hey, Tony Dorsett's got a league in Gallup. Could we put your name on our local football league? It's not doing great. We need to generate some more interest and excitement. And I was like, Grants, New Mexico. Stacy, I know you're from he said, well, we're an hour west of Albuquerque. I'm like, all right, you got it. Whatever you need, man, I'll do for you guys. And then it turned into, hey, can we have a fundraiser, a dinner, and a golf tournament? And Grants it's far enough away from Albuquerque and a little more recessed area, and the kids need equipment. They need lights at the field.
Right.
And Stacy and his family and a lot of the people there have been over backwards to try to help the youth there. And once I got there and kind of saw what the excitement level was for people to have celebrities come in and it's been awesome, so this will be year number 20 and
Wow.
we generate money for the youth programs there, and they put on some camps, have some great guys like Preston come in and help with the camps, and they do it for all sports. And so Jason Giambi's coming this year, so
Oh, okay.
that people are willing to go to Grants, New Mexico, and to take part in it, and we try to raise what we can out there and help the kids. So proud to have the Detmer Youth Football League there in Grants, New Mexico, and go out and get to interact with the people and see the kids grow up.
Oh, Ty got that call that interrupts a great. There he is. He's back. He's back. Nothing editing can't fix.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, Stacy's been great. He's a good friend. Their family, his dad started Ed Corley Ford out there, and great family. So I always enjoy going back and seeing them.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to you coming back. All right. Well, we move to the part of the show, my friend, where the 2-minute drill is the remaining portion of this little gambit here. And we first want to say thank you so much for your time this evening. This has been wonderful, and I'm sure we could do a whole nother hour if we wanted to.
Easily.
But the 2-minute drill, quick wit, your personality, your first thought, your convictions, a surprise or two. All right, you ready?
You bet.
All right.
Maybe not.
Everybody else has survived it, but you'll find him. It's going to be interesting to hear his take on it. All right, 2-minute drill of the Gridiron Icon podcast. Turf or grass?
Grass.
Oh, okay. He's right there. College or NFL?
College.
Texas or Utah?
Texas. Once you're
Oh.
a Texan, you can't go back.
I love it.
Love it, love it. I think that's a first, but everybody from there, you know.
Texans.
All right, your favorite movie?
Dumb and Dumber.
That is awesome.
Would you have thought?
So you're saying there's a chance, Ty. Got
You're
it.
telling me that. Yeah.
All right, your most underrated teammate at any level?
Man, Daryl Davis, high school running back.
Wow. Shout out to Daryl.
Eric Dickerson protege. That guy was 6'2", about 190 pounds. He just could not stay in college. He went to Dixie,
Really?
JC, and didn't make grades. And man, but that guy, he had everything he wanted. So
Daryl Davis.
he was a great running back for us in high school.
Oh,
Wow.
my God. With a name like that, he should have been. I mean, that's smooth. Daryl Davis, okay.
All right.
All right, your greatest football achievement?
The Heisman Trophy, I guess.
There you go. You guess.
Little thing.
That's right.
Okay, here's a big one. Who plays you in a movie about your life?
Well, I hope it's not Jim Carrey, but or Pee Wee Herman, like Lavelle said. But
Wow.
yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about that one. That's a good one. So we'll go with Kevin Costner. How about that?
Oh, love it, love it.
You know, that
perfect.
works.
My coaches, my assistant coaches, and people here call me Ted Lasso. Maybe him.
That's awesome. Kevin Costner, you do kind
a
of
good
resemble him. That's a good one.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
he's done some of the sports movies, Dancing with the Wolves, some of those.
Yeah.
A little bit of country, a little bit of sports. So
I like it.
There you go.
I like it.
Oh my God,
Amazing.
Ty, wonderful. This has been outstanding. We certainly appreciate you joining us this evening. And gosh, wish we could do more, but I tell you, we're just gonna have to invite you back because there's
right.
so much about
Yes.
you.
You got
so
it.
glad that you came and shared a little bit about what you're doing, and I'm gonna continue to golf for you.
All right. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on.
I love it. And folks, those listening or watching on our YouTube channel here at Gridiron Icon, you can find Ty on Twitter. I'm sure he just lives there, at Ty Detmer 14. So go follow Ty, watch his coaching career take off. Ty Detmer, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Really appreciate you taking the time. And for our listeners out there, like, subscribe, follow. You find us on all the major podcast hosts. And again, Preston, parting shots for Ty Detmer. Just a big, big thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right, folks, we will see you next week.